Hi everybody, welcome back to my webinar. If you can hear me, please will you raise your hand? Cool, so if you can hear me and you can see my screen, please raise your hand. Apologies for the delay, we seem to have had some sound issues, but for now I'm assuming that everybody can see my screen and they can hear me clearly. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Okay, welcome to my webinar. Today we are going to be chatting about Revit MEP and focusing primarily on spaces and zones. It's my first MEP webinar, so I'm quite excited. If you have any questions at any time during the webinar, you're welcome to either message me the chat panel or you can sorry, raise your hand and ask me a question, okay? I see somebody still can't see my screen. So I'm gonna try, okay, let's see. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Please, this is the last I'm gonna ask this hopefully. If you can see my screen and you can hear me, please will you raise your hand? Okay, so everybody should be able to see my screen and hear me. Okay, so again, welcome to our MEP webinar. On our agenda for now, I'm just going to do a brief introduction to Baker Bains, and simply because that's usually how we start off our webinars. For starters, who is Baker Bains? Well, we are the fastest growing design and technology partner in South Africa, and we're also the largest Autodesk authorized gold partner. We specialize in the AEC environment as well as plant processing and also simulation software. Okay, we are also an authorized training center, an Autodesk authorized training center, so we provide training support for all Autodesk products. We also a reseller for Adobar, which is a detailing package which structural engineers use, and it works on an AutoCAD platform. And we're also a reseller for CAD Learning, which is an online assessment tool. If you would like more information on any of these, you are most welcome to drop me a message or message me in the chat panel. Drop me a message or raise your hand. I'm also going to have my email address at the end of the presentation, and you can get all my details from there. Okay, we also offer civil site design. Sorry. So for any of these, if you would like information on any of these, you're most welcome to message me. Right, at Baker Bains, we've got certain beliefs. I'm going to run through it quite briefly. The first one is in designing a better world. And basically, we've got a technological role to play in influencing the impact of design in today's changing world. Secondly, we also believe in delivering a better project or product. And we've actually got the proven ability to engage and consult with our clients so that we can help them improve the delivery of their project. And then lastly, and one of my favorites, technology adoption. So basically, we don't just want to sell you the software. We want to actually assist you to adopt it so that you can use it effectively. Right, so on our agenda today, we are going to cover creating spaces. We're going to look at area and volume computations, working with spaces and the properties of it, creating zones, as well as using the system browser and creating color schemes. So the first thing we're going to look at is how to create spaces. Now, for those of you who are already in a mechanical environment, you should know that the space element is a critical component in the process of establishing heating and cooling loads. Spaces are also used to calculate light levels based on the number and types of lighting fixtures in that specific room. Spaces also identify each room in a building, and it provides the area, the perimeter, as well as volume information And this is essentially especially important because they are used in electrical, mechanical, as well as energy analysis. Right, so that's the importance of spaces. The second thing we're going to talk about is space usage. Now, when you think of spaces, it's very similar to rooms, right? And when I mean rooms, I mean how the rooms are um, created using the architectural side of Revit. The difference is that spaces contain more information for heating and cooling loads analysis. And that's obviously what the MEP or mechanical guys look for, right? And then we're also going to look at how you add these specific spaces to linked model. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to know before you can add a space to a linked model. I do have a short video on it, but I'm also going to do a live demo on it. Now, before you add the space on the project, it's always helpful to set up a couple of things. Um, one of these things is room bounding. So you basically want to make sure that the room bounding elements in a linked element or in an actual project um, is enclosed off either with room bounding, and if that doesn't work, you use your separation lines, right? It's also helpful sometimes to create different views for that spaces so that it doesn't have any conflict with your existing views. And then that also helps you to keep track of where your actual spaces is going to be. Okay. The next thing we're going to look at is before I start up my Revit, we're going to just chat about area and volume computations. In terms of area and volume computations, there's a couple of things that you need to remember here also. The first one is setting the boundary location. Now you can set the way Autodesk Revit calculates volumes and boundary locations, and this is essentially done in the Analyze tab. Um, you use the spaces and zones function, and then expand the little title and click on area and volume computations until you open up the volume computations dialog box, right? When we're chatting about areas and volumes, typically what happens is you have the areas and volumes on when you're working on a Revit MEP project. What this means is that it actually impacts the spaces that's controlled by bounding elements. And when we say bounding elements, we're talking about the roofs and the ceilings, which is shown in this image, right? When we talk about creating views for spaces, now by default, the spaces only display when you hover the cursor over them. To help you place the spaces, what you need to then do is create a view that displays them as well as the limit. So what you do is you basically go into your visibility graphics, you go under your model categories and you set it on, right? Like I said, I am going to show you how to do it in Revit, just for presentation purposes now. Right. When we're working with spaces, I want you to watch the video first. If the sound does not work, you can always drop me an email and I can actually share the video with you. Alternatively, I am going to do it on Revit also. Okay, so I'm going to fire up my Revit and I'm going to actually show you how to do it. All right, so give me a second. This is my Revit, right? So what I did was I actually opened up a mechanical template and I linked in a drawing. Okay, so this drawing itself has a couple of rooms in here and it's basically just, it was created in an architectural template and I've just linked it into mine. Now, if you just go a few steps back, the first thing what you need to do is you need to make this room bounding, right? So if I just hover, click on it, click on the actual link. So firstly, I went insert, I went link Revit, and I linked this drawing in, okay? If you go to insert and you manage links, you can actually see there's my Revit link. So what I do is I select it, I go edit the type, and you'll see here's an option for room bounding. If you don't do that and you go to your analyze tab and you say space, it doesn't actually pick up the rooms that were created in the architectural model. And basically what you want is you want your Revit model to read what's been created so that you can, it avoids you from having to rename all these spaces, right? So what you need to do first is you select your linked model, you go to edit the type, you click on room bounding, right? You go okay. Now when you click on your analyze tab and you go to space, when you hover, you'll see that it now picks up those rooms. The reason for that is the room bounding function has been set up, it has been clicked on, right? When you say place spaces automatically, it's going to automatically create these spaces for you. So now when you hover and you click and you go to your properties, you'll see that this one is, when you go to identity data, it says the room name is the ensuite, right? It comes up as name, but what we are going to do now is we're basically going to copy what the architect has and then rename what it is called in the mechanical model, right? There's a couple of ways of doing it. For now, I'm going to show you this option. So I went space and I said automatically space it. Now when I go to space naming, it now gives you the option of, do you want to name all of them? If you go names and numbers, it's going to use the name and the number. Then you've got the option of choosing the names only or the numbers only. So I'm going to go names and numbers and I'm going to go okay. Right? So when I hover over this section now, you'll see that that name now matches this room name. So basically what's happened is the information from the architect's model has been filtered through or has filtered through and is now coming up in your mechanical model also. If you want that tag to show, what you can do is you click on space tags and you just click on it. Right? So now you're actually tagging it. That's if you require the tag to actually show. Okay. And what this means is it's actually matching what's in the architect's model, because if you click on it again, you can see that under identity data, the room name was bedroom 3 and the name in the mechanical model is now the same. And then also the room number matches the current room number. Right? So that's how you would do your spaces in a mechanical environment. If, for example, you wanted to put in a separate space, you can do that if you're using a space separator. So I'm going to put a space separator there, and I'm going to try space. And now do you see that this picks up a different space in between? So if I click on that one, this is now a different space. And you'll see that it still says room name lounge because it was part of this lounge initially, right? But I've now made it into two different spaces. So when you find yourself wanting to create your own space, you can use the space separator. Okay? Again, if you have any questions, you're most welcome to message me in the chat panel or raise your hand. Okay, let me just open up another drawing. So I have another drawing here, very similar to the one I just did. This is a linked model. So if I click on here, I go to my properties, you'll see this one has already been bounded. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go click on analyze and I'm going to say space, but I'm going to click on tag on placement. So now when I click on this room, now notice I'm not going place spaces automatically. This time I'm going to say tag on placement. And when I do that, you'll see it comes up as something called chase, right? And when you look in your properties, you'll see, if I hover and select it, you'll see that that's actually called the cafeteria. Now this works exactly the same. Chase is just the default tag that's coming up at the moment. But for you to change that, you just go again, you go back to your space naming, you say numbers and or names and numbers, you go okay, and you see it's now taken on the properties of what it was called in your architectural model, right? So those are your options if you want to add spaces. The next thing we're going to look at is how to create zones. Now, let me just run you through it again. Now, if you want to specify room bounding for, the first thing we're going to do, the first thing we did was we specified room bounding for linked model. The room bounding uses the surfaces from the linked model to enclose spaces placed in areas in the model, right? Then we place the spaces. We place these spaces throughout the model to amount for the entire volume. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to define various zones. Spaces and zones maintain MEP information that you can use to actually define your system requirements. And when you assign spaces to zones for the particular systems, that's for that particular system that you are designing, right? When we're talking about creating zones, it's basically to prepare your heating and it's preparing to compute your heating and cooling loads. And basically what it does is it's dividing the building into zones, like it's shown here on this image. And each zone consists of a similar space that's going to be heated or cooled in the same manner. Now, there's always one default zone in the project, right? All spaces are then automatically attached to that zone when they are initially created. Now, while you're adding the zones into it, while you can actually add zones into a template, you should actually add the spaces first and then create the zones, and then add spaces to the zones. So basic, and also the cool thing is you can create both plan, you can create it in both plan and section views. Right? System browser forms part of creating zones. So that's why I'm going to do it together and then I'm going to open up Revit. Right? When we're talking about the system browser, basically the system browser is, and sorry, another useful tool when working with spaces and zones. When you select a space in the project of the system browser, it's going to display in the project and system browser as you're seeing here, right? The selected zone in space is automatically then made active in the properties, like you see, and this will enable you to actually modify the names for the spaces and zones and assign information such as electrical and mechanical flow. So what I'm going to do is I want to go back to Revit. Right, here's my Revit. I'm going to open up another drawing, which is my zones, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add zones. Now this is my drawing. So firstly, what you want to do is, okay, so let's just go to our visibility graphics first. Let's look at our visibility graphics, and then let's expand our HVAC, right? Let's look for our HVAC section, which is here, and I want HVAC zones. Right, so I'm going to expand it. I want the interior fill to show as well as the reference lines. So I'm going to go OK. Right, and then under my Analyze tab, so here's Analyze, I'm going to go back to the Spaces and Zones panel, which is here, and I'm going to click on Zone. Right. Once I've done that, in my properties under identity data, you'll see that you can actually type a name for that zone. By default, it comes up as number 1, and it's actually numbered incrementally, right? Then in the edit zone function, you'll see that you can actually add spaces now. So I'm going to add it, right? You must make sure that you want to add space option. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the different spaces. Okay. So I'm going to, just give me a second. Right. So I'm going to select the spaces. That one, that one, that one, that one. And when I'm done, I can go finish zone. Now, obviously, if I wanted to take one off, I can actually select it. I can say back under, you'll see that the modify HVAC zones comes up automatically. I can say edit the zone, and I can say remove a particular space. So if I take this one off and I go finish, you'll see that it's now been excluded. So that basically detaches that particular space from that zone. Now, zones don't automatically have a tag place, but it's helpful to actually display it as you are working. So how you would annotate it then, you would go to your annotate command. You'd say tag by the tag panel, which is here. You'll say tag by category, and then you can actually hover over it, and you'll see that it comes up with that number 1. Right? You just move it to the side. If I wanted to say a specific name, I can click on it. Click on the tag. Right? And I can actually rename the tag right here. So if I go, let's leave it as 1 and say classrooms. So what I've done now is I've created a zone of classrooms, and I've also renamed that zone. Right? Now, remember I said we're going to chat about the systems browser. The systems browser is obviously useful when you are working with spaces. Right? The systems browser itself is one of those dockable tabs, so you can move it down and dock it where you feel like. Right? So I'm just going to dock it by the side. And how you would use the systems browser is under your Analyze tab, under the systems browser, I've actually put mine out. So how you would find it is under View, under User Interface, you'll see there's a Systems Browser, right? User Interface, Systems Browser. So that's my Systems Browser. So what I'm going to do is under my Systems Browser, under Systems, I'm going to choose Zones. And you'll see that it comes up with Classroom. Sorry. It comes up with those classrooms that I've assigned to the classroom zone. Okay. And you'll see that there's the default one that I also said comes up automatically. And basically the default one is all the spaces that has not been assigned to a specific zone yet. All right. So now what each space is showing now is that it's showing either occupiable, sorry, or not occupiable, or basically the space has not been placed. So you'll see here, let me just enlarge it. Click on it. I go to my properties. Let me go back here. Okay, so you'll see that, let me just double click on that one. Okay, so you'll see that when it's a little green, looks like a little house, that means that it's occupiable. You'll see that the red one, if you're looking at the properties, is unticked and therefore not occupiable, right? Now, as you're adding zones into your building, it's going to move from the default and it's going to go into a specific zone. So I'm going to do another one just so that you can see what happens. I essentially want to use this one. So I'm going to go to analyze. I'm going to say zone, and I'm going to add the space. I'm going to choose this one and this one, and I'm going to go finish, and then I'm going to go say tag it. So annotate, tag by category, call it that. And for this one, I'm just going to say, call it restrooms. Right. Now, do you see that it automatically pops up in my systems browser? Right. So that's how you would add zones to your actual model. Now, once these zones have been added, you then want to create color schemes. When we're working with zones and spaces, it's actually very useful to have a view that displays a color coding for individual zones. Not just the individual zones, but also the spaces, the rooms, like it's shown on this image on my screen. You can then include a colorful legend in the same view to help clarify the use of these colors. Color schemes are, though, just something to remember, color schemes are controlled by a view property. So you should create a view for each color. You should create a view for each color diagram if you want to include it. Right? So I'm going to create a color scheme for you. Right. Let's just go to a drawing. Right, so we'll stay in the zone drawing. And then what we are going to do is we are first going to set up a color scheme in a view. Right, and in order for us to do that, what I want to do is I don't want the color scheme to conflict with the views that I have. So I'm going to actually duplicate a view and then use that for the color scheme. All right. So this space plan 1, I'm going to duplicate it. Let's just see what else they have. Okay, let's go on signing. Let me just open that drawing. Okay, I'm still okay. So we're back. So in this drawing, what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to duplicate it, right? So I've added my zones first, and then I'm going to duplicate and make a color fill for you. All right, so let me just duplicate it. So I'm going to right click and say duplicate with detailing. All right, so here's my duplicated view. Um, Now what I'm going to do is in my properties in the graphics view, so in here under graphics, let's just find graphics. I'm going to click color scheme. When I click on the color scheme, I'm going to choose HVAC zones. And when I click on scheme 1, you can actually see those colors coming up automatically. So the two zones that I've created, the classrooms and the restrooms, they come up with default colors. Obviously, you can change these colors if you don't like it. So I'm going to go OK, and you'll see that those colors have now changed. Right? Maybe the green wasn't a good color to use. I'm going to go back there, is change this color. Sorry. Just change it to that one. And now you can see that it's actually been changed. Okay. Now what you want to do is you want to put a legend on that actually matches this. All right. So under the Analyze tab again, to the far right, you'll see there's a colorful legend. If you click on it, you'll see that it brings up a colorful legend for you that matches what you have just indicated on your drawing. Right? Um, if I click on the color scheme in my properties again, and I change this color to say yellow, for example, you'll see this color scheme also updates. So there's always going to be a connection between your legend and your plan where you actually did the zones. That is actually the end of our webinar. Just in summary, if you look at what we've covered, so we've covered how to create spaces, how to do area and volume computations, how to work with the spaces and their properties, how to create zones, how to work with the system browser, and how to create color schemes. If you have any questions, I'm going to be online until about 3 o'clock. You're most welcome to either message me in the chat panel or raise your hand. If you would like to contact me, my email is on the screen. It's rosa@bakerbanes.com. And if you'd like to get in touch with Baker Banes itself, all our social media handles are also on the screen. All right. Thank you for joining our webinar. If there's any specific topic that you'd like, you're most welcome to get in touch with us, and then we can set it up for you. Okay, it seems there are no questions. If you'd like to get in touch with me, my email is on the screen, rosa@beckerbenz.com. Thank you for joining the webinar. We hope that you are going to join all our other ones as well. Again, if you've got a specific topic that you'd like us to cover, you're also welcome to get in touch. Thank you.